The room smelled like antiseptic and old money. Everything was white, white curtains, white bed sheets, white silence. In the center of it all lay Julian Blackwell, 33 years old, heir to one of the oldest luxury hotel empires in the country. A man who once commanded boardrooms now lay completely still, a thin scar on his temple, the only visible mark from the car crash that had nearly taken his life. Or so the world believed. Julian Blackwell was not in a coma. He was pretending. Outside the thick glass door of his private hospital suite, muffled voices broke the quiet. "I'm telling you," came Damien's voice, Julian's cousin, always slick, always overdressed, always smiling when he thought no one was watching. "This is our chance. The board is restless. If we don't step in now, we might lose everything. Step in." The second voice was colder, smoother. "Catherine Blackwell, Julian's stepmother." "No, Damien. We take control. He's vulnerable. His assets are vulnerable. The board won't wait forever, and neither should we." Damien hesitated. But the lawyer, Julian's estate attorney, still insists. "That attorney won't be a problem for long," Catherine interrupted. "He's loyal, yes, but isolated. We keep pushing the narrative, Julian may never wake up. And if we keep the nurse compliant, this will be over within weeks." Inside the room, Julian's heart pounded beneath his motionless body. So it was true. He had suspected the crash wasn't an accident. A last-minute trip to the Hamptons had ended with a shredded guardrail, a flipped car, and a diagnosis of non-traumatic coma. But Julian had regained consciousness within 2 days and chosen not to speak. Not yet. He needed time. He needed to know who had betrayed him. The door opened with a soft hiss. Footsteps, slower this time, gentler. Julian already knew that rhythm. "Nora." "Good morning, Mr. Blackwell," she said softly. "It's just me." She moved around the bed with calm efficiency, checking his vitals, adjusting his blanket, brushing his hair back with a practiced hand. There was no pity in her touch, only professionalism, and something else Julian couldn't quite name yet. He had watched her through barely opened eyes when she wasn't looking. The way she read aloud at night. The way she hummed to herself while changing his for. She treated him like a human being, not a lost cause. And she never said anything cruel. "Your levels look stable today," Nora said quietly, scribbling in the chart. She sat beside him and sighed. "I don't know if you can hear me, but I think you can. Just a feeling." Julian's chest tightened. "I took this job because I needed the money," she continued. "That's not a crime. I didn't ask too many questions because life doesn't let me. But now that I'm here, I see things. I hear things. And they don't sit right." She glanced toward the door. "Your cousin came in yesterday. He told someone over the phone that you weren't waking up anytime soon." The tone in his voice scared me. "I don't know what kind of family you have, Mr. Blackwell, but I think they want you gone." Julian's fingers twitched. "I should say nothing," Nora whispered. "I should just take my paycheck and keep quiet. But I can't. I've lost too much already. I became a nurse to help people. And whether you're listening or not, I won't be part of something that lets someone fade away just because they're inconvenient." She stood slowly. "I'm going to start keeping 2 logs, one for them and one that's honest." That night, after the last checks and the cleaning staff had left, Nora dimmed the lights and sat by his bedside. She brought her own copy of The Little Prince and began reading to him. Then she closed the book and spoke from the heart. "I wasn't supposed to be your nurse. I was filling in for someone else. I heard Catherine in the hallway say they just needed to keep you sedated until things were finalized." Her voice cracked. "I'm afraid I was hired to help someone die. I won't do it. I won't be part of something cruel." She touched his hand. "You're not alone. A single tear slipped from the corner of Julian's eye. Every night after that, Nora spoke to him. She shared pieces of her life. Stories from nursing school, her father the plumber who believed in quiet kindness. Julian listened. In a world that had taught him to trust no one, Nora spoke like someone who still believed in people. One evening, as she leaned close, she whispered, "Julian, if you can hear me, give me a sign. Anything." His index finger twitched, then curled deliberately. Nora froze, then laughed in stunned joy. "You can hear me. You've been listening this whole time, haven't you?" From that night on, everything changed. They developed a language, one twitch for yes, stillness for no, blinks, finger taps. She brought flashcards and an alphabet chart. Slowly, carefully, they communicated. The connection deepened. Julian learned about her dreams and fears. Nora learned about the man behind the name and the money. She promised, "I won't let them do this to you. We're going to get you back." With Nora's help, Julian began to recover in secret. She placed a hidden camera in the medication room. 2 nights later, they captured footage of Damien and Catherine openly discussing keeping him sedated, filing a DNR, and removing Nora once the paperwork was done. Nora sent the video to Julian's loyal attorney, Avery Blake. His reply came quickly, "I'm on my way. Keep him safe." Weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, Julian opened his eyes fully. He looked straight at Nora. "Hi," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "You're really back." In the days that followed, they planned carefully. Then came the boardroom confrontation. Julian walked in supported by a cane, dressed in a tailored suit. Gasps filled the room as Catherine and Damien turned pale. He played the recording for everyone, board members, executives, reporters. "You tried to erase me," Julian said, looking at his stepmother. "And you almost succeeded. If it hadn't been for one person, I wouldn't be here." He turned to Nora. "She stayed. She cared. She saved me." The evidence was overwhelming. Charges were filed. Catherine and Damien were eventually convicted and sent to prison. In the quiet aftermath, Julian found Nora packing her things in the locker room. "You left this," he said, holding up her notebook. He opened it gently. "I read the part where you said you were falling for me, and you hated it because you were scared. I don't see you differently. I fell for the person who sat beside me when I was more ghost than man." He reached for her hand. "Will you come back with me? Not as a nurse, just as yourself." "Yes," she whispered. 1 year later, Julian had stepped back from daily operations to focus on the Nora Ellis Foundation, which protected vulnerable patients and supported healthcare whistleblowers. They created a quiet desert retreat in New Mexico where they could escape the world. One golden evening on a desert trail, Julian knelt down with a simple rose gold ring set with desert jasper. "Nora Ellis, you didn't just save me. You saved everything, my life, my name, my hope. Will you marry me?" She dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around him. "Yes. Always." They married in a small garden ceremony surrounded by the people they had helped. Their love story wasn't born from fireworks. It began in silence, grew through trust, and proved that compassion can outshine betrayal, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is believe in someone when the rest of the world has walked away. The desert air felt warm and dry against Nora's skin as she stood on the wide wooden porch of their New Mexico retreat. 1 year had passed since the wedding, but some mornings still felt like a dream she was afraid to wake from. Julian stepped up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Coffee's ready," he said softly, his voice carrying that low, steady tone she had grown to love. She leaned back into him. "You know, I still catch myself checking your pulse sometimes." Julian chuckled. Old habits. They had built a quiet life here between the foundation work and the hotels. Julian had handed day-to-day operations to a trusted team, keeping only final decisions for the biggest moves. The Nora Ellis Foundation had already helped expose 2 more cases of medical neglect in different states. Whistleblowers were coming forward more often now. The work was hard, but it felt right. That afternoon they drove into the small nearby town for supplies. As they walked out of the general store, a young woman in scrubs recognized them. She hesitated, then approached. "Mrs. Blackwell." "Mr. Blackwell," she said, voice nervous but hopeful. "I just wanted to thank you. My mom was in a facility last year. The foundation's lawyer helped us get her proper care. She's home now." Nora's eyes softened. "I'm so glad to hear that." Julian shook the woman's hand. "Keep speaking up when something feels wrong. That's how change happens." Back at the house as the sun began to set, they sat on the porch swing. Nora rested her head against Julian's chest, listening to his heartbeat, strong and steady, the sound she had once prayed to hear. "I've been thinking," Julian said after a while. "Maybe it's time we expand the foundation overseas. Start with one of the countries where we have hotels." Nora smiled. "Only if we do it together. No more hiding behind desks or titles." "Together," he agreed. Later that night, under a sky thick with stars, Julian took her hand and led her back to the overlook where he had proposed. The same desert jasper in her ring caught the moonlight. "Remember when I couldn't speak?" he asked. "Every day," she whispered. "I spent weeks listening to you, falling in love with your voice, your courage, your heart. Now I get to spend the rest of my life hearing it every morning." Nora turned to him, eyes shining. "And I get to wake up next to the man who chose to fight instead of disappear." He kissed her slowly, the kind of kiss that still felt new even after a year of marriage. When they pulled apart, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. Thank you for proving that love can grow in the quietest places," she replied. They stood there a long time, wrapped in each other, the desert wind carrying away the last shadows of the past. The empire, the scandal, the fear, they were all behind them now. What remained was something stronger, 2 people who had chosen each other not because it was easy, but because it was real. And in the stillness of the desert night, their story kept writing itself, one honest word, one steady heartbeat at a time. 2 years after their wedding, the desert retreat had become more than an escape, it was home base. Nora stood in the sunlit nursery they had just finished painting a soft sage green, running her hand over the wooden crib Julian had built himself. Her other hand rested gently on her rounded belly. 6 months pregnant, and every kick still took her breath away. Julian appeared in the doorway, wiping sawdust from his hands. His eyes softened the moment they landed on her. "How's our little fighter doing today?" "Active," Nora laughed. "Just like his father. He's been practicing soccer since sunrise." Julian crossed the room and placed both hands on her belly, feeling the movement. The awe on his face never got old. "We're really doing this," he murmured. "A family." They had talked about it for months before deciding to try. After everything they had survived, they wanted to build something beautiful that couldn't be taken away. The foundation was thriving. Now operating in 4 states and 2 countries, but nothing compared to this. That evening they drove to the foundation's local clinic in the nearby town. A group of nurses and social workers had gathered for a training session Nora helped design. As she spoke to the room, Julian watched from the back with quiet pride. Afterward, one of the younger nurses pulled Nora aside. "I was in your shoes 2 years ago, scared to speak up about a patient being oversedated. Your story gave me courage." "Thank you." Nora squeezed her hand. "Just keep listening to that voice inside. That's what matters." On the drive home under a painted sunset, Julian reached over and took her hand. "You've changed more lives than you realize." "We have," she corrected gently. Back at the house, they settled on the porch swing like always. The desert cooled quickly after dark, so Julian draped a soft blanket over her shoulders. Nora leaned into him, her head on his chest. "I've been thinking about names," she said. "What do you think about Elias?" "It means, the Lord is my God, and it feels like a second chance." Julian smiled against her hair. "Elias Blackwell. I like it. Strong, but kind. Like his mom." A comfortable silence settled between them until Nora spoke again, voice quieter. "Sometimes I still have nightmares about the hospital. About almost losing you." "I know," he whispered, holding her closer. "I do too. But then I wake up and you're here. Real. Mine. And I remember we won." She tilted her face up to kiss him. It was slow and full of years of trust. When they pulled apart, Julian rested his hand on her belly again. "Our son is going to grow up knowing what real love looks like," he said. "Not power. Not money. Just two people who chose each other every single day." Nora's eyes shimmered. "And who chose to do good even when it was hard." The stars came out one by one overhead. Far in the distance, coyotes called across the canyons, but inside their little world everything felt safe. The empire still ran smoothly under good leadership. The foundation continued its quiet revolution. And here, in the heart of the desert, Julian and Nora were building something even more powerful, a family rooted in the same silence where their love had first taken root. As Nora drifted toward sleep against him, Julian kissed the top of her head and whispered the same words he said almost every night now. "Thank you for believing in me." She smiled in her half-sleep. "Thank you for coming back to me." Their story kept unfolding, not in grand headlines anymore, but in the steady rhythm of heartbeats, shared dreams, and the soft kicks of new life. A love that had begun in stillness had grown into something loud and lasting, proving once again that the quietest beginnings often lead to the most beautiful futures. 3 months after Elias was born, the desert house felt fuller than it ever had. The nursery, once quiet and waiting, now echoed with soft coos and the gentle creak of the rocking chair where Nora sat nursing their son in the early morning light. Julian leaned against the doorframe, watching them with the same wonder he'd worn since the delivery room. Elias had arrived on a stormy desert night, strong lungs, dark hair like his father's, and his mother's determined spirit. The labor had been long, but Nora had gripped Julian's hand through every contraction, whispering the same words he once used in silence: "We've been through worse. We've got this." Now, in the peaceful dawn, Julian crossed the room and knelt beside the chair. He brushed a kiss against Nora's temple, then gently touched Elias's tiny hand. The baby's fingers curled around his father's thumb instinctively. "He's perfect," Julian said softly. "He looks like you when he's stubborn about sleeping," Nora teased, smiling down at their son. The foundation work had slowed for them in these early months, but it hadn't stopped. A small team kept things running, and they handled the most important decisions from home. Julian had installed a secure office in the back room so he could stay close. Nora returned to advisory work part-time, reviewing cases and mentoring young nurses who reached out. One afternoon, a package arrived from the foundation clinic. Inside were letters from families they had helped, handwritten thank yous, drawings from children, and one small photo of a woman now healthy and smiling with her daughter. Nora read them aloud while Julian held Elias against his chest. "This is why we kept fighting," she said, voice thick with emotion. That evening they took a slow walk along the familiar trail as the sun dipped low. Julian carried Elias in a soft carrier against his chest while Nora walked beside them, her hand in Julian's. The baby slept peacefully, lulled by the rhythm of his father's steps. "I never imagined this," Julian admitted. "Not after the hospital. Not after everything they tried to take from me. A wife I love more every day. A son. A life that actually feels like mine." Nora squeezed his hand. I used to sit by your bed wondering if you'd ever wake up. Now I wake up every morning next to you and our baby. Sometimes it still feels like a miracle. They reached the overlook where he had proposed years earlier. The desert stretched endlessly below, painted in shades of gold and purple. Julian shifted Elias carefully and pulled Nora close with his free arm. I want him to know the whole story one day, he said. Not just the headlines. I want him to know his mom sat in the dark and chose kindness when no one was watching. That she believed in a man who couldn't even speak. And that his dad fought his way back, Nora added, and chose love over revenge. Elias stirred, letting out a small sigh. They both laughed softly. As the stars began to appear, they headed back to the house. Later, after Elias was settled in his crib, Julian and Nora curled up on the couch together. The quiet between them was comfortable, full of years of trust. You saved me, Julian whispered, the same words he had said in the hospital. Nora smiled against his chest. We saved each other. Their love had begun in silence and secrecy. It had survived betrayal and fear. And now it lived in the everyday miracles, a baby's first smile, late-night feedings, shared cups of tea on the porch, and the steady knowledge that no matter what came next, they would face it together. The Blackwell name had once meant power and wealth. Now, thanks to Nora, it stood for something deeper, compassion, second chances, and the kind of love that grows strongest in the quiet moments. And in the heart of the desert, under a vast sky, their family kept writing the next beautiful chapter, one heartbeat at a time.